So today we're speaking to Catherine de Saint Phalle, who's the author of 6 novels in French and 2 novels and a memoir in English, as well as working on a current project. We're wanting to just hear a little bit about your books and your writing and any tips you have for aspiring writers.
Right. Well, before I answer your question, I would like, I humbly do an acknowledgement to country for indigenous people who are the owners of the land and who are the roots of any cultural, especially in cultural expressions. They are the roots, the good roots, from where we can spring and express something sincere and deep.
I was wanting to start with just a question about how you came to be a writer, or why you chose to become a writer.
I didn't choose to be a writer. I think you are a writer or you are not a writer, you know, without being Shakespearean. I think you start, when I was 7, I started writing little stories in a little book that my father gave me. And my father was, I must say, a narrator and a storyteller. And he was always, you know, telling me very, very intense stories, terrible stories of Greeks and Romans and antique stories of the antiquity. So I suppose my brain was washed with stories. Awash with stories. So I started writing my own little story. I remember the first one, it was about a lawyer, God knows why, and it was a tiny little story, of course, because I was only 7. And I think unfairness has always been something that has driven me, though I'm not a lawyer, or even anybody that would work in a group or defend a cause in a public way. I think I defend what I believe in a private, quiet way. I think that writing is what has always driven me, was a sense of healing myself and maybe something larger if I can, even by the feelings you share. So that's how it happened.
Your first novel published in Australia was on Brunswick ground.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the story and what might have urged you to write the story?
Well, it was at the moment where Jill Marr was hurt and killed, and I was very, very sensitive to the atmosphere in the place. So the genius look, I felt as if it was crumbled or folded or crumbled and hurt. Everywhere I went in Brunswick, I felt this, the traffic lights, the way the people walked, the atmosphere was completely wrenched apart by this death. And there were several others after. I was shocked. And then I gave French lessons to put some butter on the spinach, as the French say. And I met a woman who was who was physically so moved by this. And it gave me the idea, it just gave me somehow the book came to me. And as always when I start a book, I start with an image that seems to be in the back of my mind, or I start with a voice, which is what my latest novel was. But here it was about the atmosphere and about this woman who, she really inspired me. And because she was all white and she lived this as if it was, she couldn't understand. She said, I feel that it's somebody of my family. And she really meant it, I could see it. She was, and it was very interesting for me to see how a public occurrence could influence and control someone's life in such a big way. And from there, the story sprang. So it's about 4 women who are friends. And it was a way to try and describe the feminine strength, not power, but strength, or not a will to power, but a power of being who you are and trying to express that in whatever circumstances you're surrounded in. So that was the story of that book. And of course, there is a connection between a man and a woman, but it's mainly the thrust of the story is about the feminine, which is such a difficult thing to describe, as if it was a little stream, you know, that could dry up so easily, and yet it always flows through all humanity. So that was what inspired me.
A novel The Sea and Us, I think that's also set in Brunswick.
Yes.
And what inspired you to write The Sea and Us? Can you tell us a little bit about the story?
Yeah, well, that was a very, very different start. I was in my bathroom and I heard this male voice. I had these words coming into my mind and thoughts coming into my mind that I felt were male in their origin. I felt this is a man thinking. And suddenly I thought he had quite an old-fashioned name. And someone told me, oh, you can't call him that name, Harold, it's so old-fashioned. And I knew it was his name, I couldn't change it. And then from then on he thickened and he, not this way, but you know, he acquired, I knew all sorts of little details, which made him so real for me. And then he took over completely. And that's how I started with him, with that story. I'll start with the first page. So the chapter's called Fish and Chips. I'm above a fish and chip shop, standing at the window of an empty room. People are walking in the spring light, each at a different pace. There's an old man in a black coat and gumboots. There's a skinny guy with tight jeans and a Ned Kelly beard. There's a pretty woman with bare arms and barely a gaze to spare, all marching past the shop windows, in and out of the shadows, in and out of the shadows. 18 years ago, when I left Melbourne, I felt strange in the world I was turning away from. Now, turning around to stare at the new doona and pillows on the floor, here I am again at 36, a stranger still. I list my few books, my English fountain pen with cartridges, my toothbrush, my electric shaver, my notebook, my iPhone, my 3 pairs of socks, 4 pairs of underpants, 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, puffy jacket and backpack, all Korean except for the fountain pen, as if I were on a desert island when someone drowns or is put in prison. I'm always stuck by the police's account of the police's account of the person's belongings, as if that last summing up, that last tally will round off what has happened, or bullet point what that human being may have become. The faint descriptions, a leather wallet, a blue pullover, a set of keys, a white handkerchief, a whistle, a lead pencil, feels fuller than a eulogy or a novel foraging into someone's story, as if they were a stark dignity or a concrete poem in a list of belongings. Thinking of lists of disconsolate objects, I have just discovered that the expression flotsam and jetsam used to consist of 4 words. Flotsam, jetsam, lingen, and derelict. In maritime law, flotsam is the floating wreckage of a ship or its cargo. Jetsam is a part of a ship, its equipment or its cargo, cast overboard or jettisoned, another appealing word, to lighten the load in times of distress which has washed ashore. Lingen are goods or wreckage lying on the bottom of the ocean, sometimes marked by a buoy, which can be reclaimed. Derelict, too, is a cargo on the bottom of the ocean, but which no one has any hope of reclaiming. It can also refer to a drifting, abandoned ship. It all depends on which one you are.
And I believe you're working on a new project as well.
Well, yeah, because I finished that novel, which was at a very difficult time of my life, and I started a new one. And then my life changed completely, and I wanted to write a book about my grandmother I never met, who died before my birth. But I always feel very connected to her, because I'm such a hippie. I love herbal essential oils and everything. And she was a kind of healer. She lived in a country place, and the people in the village would come and see her because she was very knowledgeable about herbs. So I always felt very close to her. But she died burnt alive. And my father gave me her name. He had 9 children. He gave 10 children. 2 died very early, but 10 all in all. And he gave me, the only one he gave me to whom he gave her name. So I felt I want to write, I've half written it. But then this man was in my head, so I couldn't, I had to do it. And now he's back. So I'm doing a sequel. And I missed him so much, I must say. And plus, things were not sorted. For me, they were finished in that book, but I felt there was a new something I had to sort out. That writing a book is like having problems that you solve one after the other, you know. And I wanted to solve a few more problems because poor Harold is in a terrible pickle at the moment. So there we go.
You wrote a memoir about your parents and your childhood in Paris. Can you tell those who haven't read it yet a little bit about the story?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a story. It's the story of two rather extraordinary and eccentric people who were mad as hatters, but also very wise, but who lived in terror of their family, their respective families, because for reasons I won't divulge, but they lived in what they called a situation. And they always say, oh, there's the old aunt, the nun, oh, careful, you know. So all my childhood, I lived in this situation. And they told me about it quite late. So I lived daubed in mystery, in a kind of atmosphere of secrecy and fear. But at the same time, they were very much connected. They loved each other very much. And they, when my father would come home, my mother, Alexandre, Alexandre, you know, they're so happy to see each other, and they'd rush up in their bedroom, door would close, and you'd hear them talk very late in the night. Enfin, not hear them because I lived on the bottom floor. But they were fun and mad, and they quite obsessed me. My father was an extraordinary person. He was in the French resistance, and he lived through the whole resistance. And he was so bored after, because he loved danger. And he'd cross the road without looking at the... He said each road has a number of cars, and then there's a lull, and then you can close your eyes and cross at the lull. So he loved danger. He said, I'm not brave at all because I'm just never frightened. So he just needed... I'm not like that. I'm frightened all the time. But he was just fearless. So it makes for a funny character.
And it was nominated for the Stella Prize, which is quite a prestigious prize.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Oh, it was a stunning surprise because it was stunning. I can't say anything else. I was overwhelmed. It was a phone call. Hello, hello, hello. Woohoo! You know, and that you won a prize, and I just couldn't believe it. You know, plus I'm not Australian descent, and I've been here since 2003. I got the nationality in 2008, so I was super honored and touched. And, oh, I was so touched. Yeah, and they were lovely. They're a lovely outfit, the Stella. They're really lovely people.
Although you had been published in France, when you came to Australia, it was difficult to find the right publisher, and then...
It was difficult to find a publisher, and then I was very lucky because I found not only a, but the publisher, Barry Scott, and he is the publisher of Transit Lounge. He was just really lovely. It was through a friend of mine, a wonderful writer called Roger Averill, who writes a beautiful book, who's going to have a book come out soon of short stories that are magnificent. And I read his book by chance, and I loved it so much I put a thing on Facebook. And then I thought, oh, maybe he's not on Facebook. I had a feeling he wouldn't be. I was right. So I sent it to the publisher. As you know, I said, I put this little thing out. One of your writers has moved me so much. Could you pass it on to him? 10 minutes later, I had a phone call. And he was touched by my little piece about his work. And we became mates, very good mates. He calls me Old Bean. And I love his wife too, who's called Shelley Mallet, who's a wonderful person. And we became very close. And then he said, well, he said, do you write too? I said, yeah, but I can't get published in Australia. I don't interest them at all. And he said, well, show me. And then I showed him the memoir, because I'd written 2 books. And he said, oh, that's good. And then I showed him On Brunswick Ground, and he liked it too. He sent both to his publisher, sweetheart. And then Barry emailed me, didn't call me, emailed me. And I couldn't read it. I was so nervous I couldn't read it, because I'd been trying to get published for 10 years. Like, yeah, I had done 6 now. I thought, you know, maybe they didn't interest anybody. But
if you had any tips for aspiring writers on how to improve their writing and to increase their chances of getting the right publisher.
Well, I have a very discouraging tip, because it looks like you're doing nothing, but in fact you're doing everything. I think that looking for a publisher desperately, like, it's not the way. I think that writing is like an underground river. It comes out when it will. So you must invest in your own writing. You mustn't be running after, you know, networking, and you must just talk to the people you care for. You see, me, I've got my old bin. I talk to my old bin. When I have something new, I show it to the people I love. And that's a friend, a poet friend of mine, who said that to me in France. He said, Catherine, don't go to the important people. Show it to the people you love. And that's what happened. That's how I got, you know, to Helen Garner was so kind to me, and I didn't know her from a bar of soap, but I showed it to a friend of mine who showed it to her, you see, and she wrote the blurb on Brunswick Round, and she launched my memoir. So she was so lovely. But I would never have even imagined asking her myself, you know. No. So you see, it's not, I think you have to follow your heart. That's the thing. And or you'll waddle around in, you know, circles of power, or trying to, you know, but I don't think ambition is the way. I honestly don't. Anyway, it didn't work for me. Anyway, I have none. I don't. I'm very happy when it's published, but the main thing is to get it out of me, you know. That's the main goal, because I'm so happy when it's such a relief. So yeah, that's for me. But it has worked. It took a while, because I'm 64, and I got my first novel published when I was 34, and I'd been writing since I was 7. So it could discourage some people who are more ambitious.
Did you have any ideas or any tips for people who are struggling to get those first stories down?
Well, I think the only tip is about the same thing as before. I think you should listen to your heart, and if you have a real need, like my father used to say that it's a diarrhea of ink, you know, that you have this, oh gosh, I have to, you know. If you have that, you're okay, you know. And a good tip is to write down, because, you know, we go through life and there's a lot of dribble goes through, you know, you do this, you go that, you do there, you go there. And then suddenly something really hits you. Like as if you were writing, I'm just thinking of the car because I've been over in the car, but a mosquito goes poof on your screen. But it's the same thing. If you're going through life, you have a screen, which may be your eyes, but you have something that hits you. That you write down. Anything that touches you deeply, or a phrase that is in your mind, or sometimes phrases come to me. I always a notebook, always, I'll even write on my leg or anything, just as long as it's down, because the unconscious takes it away, and we don't own our thoughts. They visit us. And when we're in a mood, we'll go to this one, you know. I don't think we possess inspiration. Inspiration is not ours. It's a mystical thing, I think.
Did you have anything else you would like to tell us about your novels or your writing? Or?
I think I feel it's like when you say something, you know, you go like that, and it's like the Ouroboros, you know, the serpent who eats his tail. I think I've thanks to your presence and your questions, I think I've come to a circle. So thank you.